Hello and welcome aboard this lovely Airbus A320. We're going to be flying from here in Wellington. We've got the lovely Flightbeam scenery, and we're going to be heading down to Queenstown today. We're going to be doing the approach to runway 23 hopefully, although the winds could change, so we'll see what we'll do when we get down there. This aircraft, Oscar Alpha Bravo, that's the registration of the aircraft, it's actually doing this flight today. It left about 3 minutes ago, so we're running a bit behind that, but what I've got scheduled is that we're going to be departing in about 17 minutes, but for now, I'm just going to set up the aircraft. We've got the ADR system aligning, we've got the passengers loading, we've got 153 passengers on board today, and 2.4 tons of cargo, 6.4 tons of fuel. So I'm just going to go set up the MCDU now. The alternate, which is Christchurch today, and the flight number is New Zealand 605. Today's cost index is 5, and we'll be cruising at flight level 340 or 34,000 feet. So you can see that our ADRs has aligned now, so our navigation display is alive. I'm just going to check the temperature here. Temperature 13 and 2.9, so we shouldn't have to worry about icing. Broken clouds at 2,300 feet and overcast clouds at 3,600. Once we get above that, it should be fine, but through those clouds we might want to have engine anti-ice on, depending on the outside air temperature. Wind is 020 at 12 knots, so we'll be taking off runway 34 today, with a slight crosswind from the right, and a pretty strong headwind. And now we'll head over to our flight plan. Today we're doing the upward 1 Papa departure. We'll be doing the ZK-OAB transition. This departure takes us out at a heading of 340 from the runway, and then we'll fly direct to the waypoint upward. Then we do a left turn to NCAM, and then direct Larox, Jonah, and to ZK-OAB. Now, for our initial climb, we need to have a maximum of 210 knots to NCAM, and then we can accelerate from there, as well as the general speed limit of 250 knots or below 10,000 feet. So for the first leg, we'll be flying down the eastern coast of the North-South Island, and then we'll turn and land from the Christchurch VOR by the Yankee 266, and that'll take us all the way to Elbrook. We'll be using the RNAV Zulu runway 23 today, and that's with the LRIV or Bravo arrival. I'll talk more about that approach when we get closer to Queenstown. For the secondary flight plan, we'll just copy the active, and we can make any changes that we need here. Radio nav page, it's tuned to the Wellington VOR, and also the ILS for runway 34 in Wellington in case we need to return to the airport. Boarding is complete, and we can see that our zero fuel weight is 56.7 tons, with an MAC zero fuel weight of 31.9%. And today's planned block fuel, according to our flight plan, is 6.4 tons. Next we'll calculate takeoff performance. Now Wellington is an interesting case, as there's strong winds, and the runway is about 6,000 feet long. V1 of 130, VR and V2 of 135, flaps 2, flex temp 54. Now would be a good time to start the APU, and switch on the fuel pumps. And we'll make sure that the cockpit door is locked. Got a zero fuel weight of 58.7 and a takeoff weight of 64.9. 153 passengers plus 6 crew. The APU is started. I'll turn on the APU bleed, and we'll turn off the external power.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback. Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Engine number 2 is starting normally. Engine number 1 has had a good start. So we'll go ahead, turn off the APU bleed, turn on the probe and window heats, and we'll turn off our APU. Set our flaps for takeoff, arm our ground spoilers, and set the auto brake to max. Takeoff config test is normal. Check the elevators. Everything looks good. Turn the taxi light on. And release the parking brake. Turn our strobe lights on, landing lights on, put our nose light on takeoff, and the runway turn off light will come on in case of an aborted takeoff. Take our set, hit the chronometer, command flex, SRS, runway, auto thrust blue. Let's stick to neutral. E1. Gear up. Get our autopilot one off. And we'll get our lights that are on the landing gear off. We'll disarm the ground spoilers too. Thrust lever decline. We'll get our flaps up. Now we're going to be starting our turn from Oakwood, and we'll be doing a 180 to the left until we head south, and we'll pass over Anchem. Anchem is also where we'll be able to accelerate above 210 knots, and at that point it's looking like we'll probably be above 10,000 feet as well. So that means we'll be able to accelerate to whatever the climb profile wants, which should probably be about 290 knots indicated airspeed. Got a lovely view of the wind turbines to our left, and you can just see the stadium off in the distance. Here we are passing through 10,000 feet, so we'll get our strobe lights to auto and our landing lights off. Fortunately, the temperature on the air temperature on takeoff was fine enough where we didn't need to turn on engine anti-ice when passing through those clouds, which is good because when you turn on the engine anti-ice, it siphons some air off from the engines. That ends up reducing the overall thrust output that we get from the engine. is passing through 13,000 feet now, which is transition altitude, so we'll set the barometer pressure to standard. It's looking extremely clear as we head south. Current forecast at Queenstown, or the current weather at Queenstown, I should say, has scattered clouds at 23,000 feet, so that's quite high, and it shouldn't interfere with our approach at all. There's no METAR available for Queenstown, but there's a terminal area forecast, or TAF, and we can see that it's becoming scattered clouds at 7,000, broken clouds at 3,000 at points, broken clouds at 1,400 even. So we can expect there to be some clouds on the approach, but it should all be broken and scattered, and it shouldn't be anything of concern. We're expecting to be at our cruising altitude, 34,000 feet, just after SEPTA. Now would be an okay time to turn off the seatbelt sign. The air is quite calm, and I don't see us running into turbulence anytime soon. Now there isn't too much to do from this point onwards, until we start descending into Queenstown. I'll catch you guys when we start to descend. Now, I was going to start recording again when we started to descend, but I thought you guys might want to see some scenery along the way. So down there, we've got the township of Kaikoura and its little peninsula, and the mountain range right next to it that is also named Kaikoura. State Highway 1 runs along this coast, and Kaikoura is basically the only main stop between the top of the South Island and Christchurch. It's one of the major stops along the way. Along this coastline, you mostly have hills and mountains that meet directly into the sea, so it makes for spectacular scenery, but it's not conducive to building townships. Kaikoura also has a small airport. It's just to the south of the township, a bit out of the way, but it's a lovely area. And I'll probably put some general aviation flying on the channel in the future, and we'll probably do some flying around here, because there's lovely scenery, and it's fairly challenging as a general aviation pilot to be flying across either mountains or ocean for a long distance without any airports or airstrips that you can land at. So, right now we're about to pass over Christchurch. This is the Ashley River, and over here we have the Waimakariri. They both flow from the Southern Alps over here, down towards the coast, just north of Christchurch. Here's Christchurch city itself. In 2011 and 2013, there were some pretty devastating earthquakes, and a lot of the buildings in the city centre had to be demolished. There's not many high-rise buildings despite it being such a large city, but it makes for a very, very interesting case in terms of urban development. Here's Lake Ellesmere. It's a large inlet. I'm not super sure if it should be called a lake, personally, because it does have a rather large opening to the sea, but it's New Zealand's, I believe, 5th or 6th largest lake. Now I know this probably isn't the most interesting thing about today's flight, but today's livery that we're using, I'll have it linked in the description below. The person who made this has done a fantastic job on the interior. The mood lighting is correct to Air New Zealand, and the seats are correct also. It's really excellent stuff. And the other thing that really impressed me about this was the cabin wall texture too. Just look at that. That is just perfect to the real aircraft. So right down there, you can see that we're passing above Ashburton. Ashburton is of no particular interest to most people, including me, and probably including you. Now I've been just checking out the weather, at Queenstown, and the winds are not favoring an approach to runway 23 as we've initially planned. The winds are 040 at 7 knots. The active runway in use is actually runway 05. So I'm just going to change our approach in the MCDU. Everything looks in order. We don't want to be landing with a tailwind into Queenstown. The runway is in fact shorter than it is in Wellington. And in addition to that, the airport elevation is 1,100 feet above sea level. So we do not want to be messing around with a tailwind at all. So, according to our MCDU, we're about 60 nautical miles from our top of descent. So I think now would be a great time for us to start briefing our approach into Queenstown, because it's not an easy approach by any means. So as I said before, we'll be doing the Arrow 2 Alpha RNP arrival, and the RNP Zulu into runway 05. We'll start off our approach by starting at Elriv, flying 25 nautical miles to Ekvox, where we can hold at a maximum of 230 knots indicated airspeed, with an inbound leg of heading 217 and left turns. If we need to descend a bit at Ekvox because we're a bit high, and we need to hold there, that would be the only place that we can do it on the approach. But assuming that we don't need to do that, we'll fly to Kaslu, where we have to be between 17,000 and 16,000 feet. Then to Mabga, where we have to be above 13,000. Gospa, where we have to be above 12,000. Then to Avgar and Ibabu, which is the initial approach fix. Then we have the RNP Zulu. From Ibabu, we head to Quebec November 577, then to Sarda, then Tepeg, Panto, Dubeg, Mopga, Omubo, Quebec November 555, 550, 545, and then to the runway. Now, our decision altitude is 2,300 feet. And that will probably mean that we will be having a decision altitude at around Quebec November 555. Now, for this approach, it is a pretty steep glide slope, and there's some pretty steep descent paths. From Omubo onwards, that's a 3.2 degree glide slope downwards. We'll do medium auto brake for this landing. We can't use maximum auto brake, because maximum auto brake only works for takeoffs and rejected takeoffs. So medium is the maximum amount of auto braking that we can use. And we'll have full reverses as well. With medium auto brake and maximum reverse, we get a landing distance of 1,489 meters, and the landing distance available is 1,831 meters. For this approach, we'll use the final approach mode, which will involve putting on the approach mode, and we'll probably get approach nav, and then we'll get the final, and it'll turn to final approach mode. We'll be able to see it up here on the annunciators on the primary flight display here. Open descent, altitude is blue, thrust idle. So now our thrust is coming back. Put on the engine anti-ice now. Kind of right out. So I'll lower the shade there. Whoa. Okay. That's a weird effect. But it looks like we are definitely going to be going into a bit of some cloud soup. The highest elevation in the area around Queenstown that we need to be concerned about is at 9,168 feet above sea level. And right next to the airport, we do have mountains that go up to over 5,000 feet in elevation. Up to 5,700 and even 7,600. That's quite high. We need to be wary of those. I'll turn off that engine anti-ice now. There's really no icing concern in this. It's very clear air at the moment. So I'm gonna turn on that seatbelt sign now. there's 13,000 feet. So we'll set the barometric pressure at Queenstown, 1013. And now that we've passed through that transition altitude, we'll turn on our landing lights and our strobe lights. There's Alt Star for 10,000. And looks like we have better visibility than I thought. The cloud layer isn't as thick as I was anticipating. Activate our approach phase now. That'll slow us down to that green dot speed there. Looks to be about 209, 210 knots. And I'm going to hit the approach mode too. We've got approach nav, and final is armed. This lake here is Lake Wakatipu. I believe it is the second largest by volume lake in New Zealand. So that little blue arrow on the navigation display here, that indicates when we're going to meet our vertical deviance bar. And that's when we're going to start descending. And that's when the final approach mode will enable, and we'll see it up here. As you can see, now we have final approach mode activated, and we're starting to descend. At this point, it would be nice to get flaps on out. So if we take a look, we're about 20 nautical miles from the airport now, about 20 nautical miles from the VOR. Here you can see our terrain radar jumping into life. That would be a good time to slow down a little more. And given our descent rate and our current speed, I'm not super comfortable with lowering flaps too. So instead I'm going to put the gear down. It's going to put a lot more drag on the airframe, and it should slow us down a lot. So we can get out flaps full. Now I'm going to get flaps 2. Flaps 3. Now for our go around, we actually have a maximum climb of 9,000 feet. Flaps full. Radio altimeter alive. Now at this point, I'll disconnect our autopilot. Turn off the flight directors. And we'll get in track FPA mode. I expect a little bit of stuttering as we come in for the final approach here, so apologies for that in the recording. You can see that our wind is really a nice strong headwind. So it's very good that we didn't land on our Q3, otherwise we'd have that as a tailwind, which is, of course, a lot worse. There's some of the stuttering that I was expecting. Now we're going to start turning left. Apply a little bit of pressure as well.
Minimum.
Continue. Fair bit of stuttering. This is more than usual. Hopefully it calms down a little. We're looking a bit high, so it's down. Extended center line's looking okay. There's a bit more back on profile. We've got a wind pushing us from the left now.
400. 300. 200.
Too low, terrain. Too low, terrain.
40, 30, 20, retard.
There's a touchdown. Spoilers. Versus green. And decel. Disengage the suppressors. And manual braking. We'll turn around on the runway here. We'll turn on our APU. Hey, get a little dance for the good parking. So thank you very much for joining me on this nice little flight from Wellington to Queenstown today. Fairly happy with the landing, happy with the approach, and how the flight went in general. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I know I made a few mistakes during the flight. Any feedback is appreciated. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.